back to another episode of the Nurture Effect podcast, hosted by Dr. Anthony Biglan, a pioneer in prevention science, best known for his work on nurturing environments, community-level behavior change, and his books, The Nurture Effect and Rebooting Capitalism. Co-hosting with Tony today is one of Values to Action's board members and volunteers, Dr. Allison Sharko. Our guest today is Dr. Stephen C. Hayes. Dr. Hayes is a foundation professor of psychology at the University of Nevada, Reno, and a co-originator of Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, ACT, and the broader relational frame theory, making him one of the most cited psychologists in the world. His work established contextual behavioral science as a unified scientific framework and has shaped both clinical practice and basic behavioral research globally.
Hi, I'm Tony Biglan. I'm the president of Values to Action. And Values to Action has begun an effort that we call a nurturing nation. And we want to make the promotion of people's well-being a higher priority than profit maximization. We would argue that virtually every sector of society has been corrupted by corporations that often profit from practices that are in fact harmful to people. And you can see our Substack essays. We describe this in some detail. But one of the things that we think is happening is that there are millions of people who are distressed about what the situation is in this country and what we can do about it. And so we start by trying to help people get clear about what their values are and how they can promote well-being by, for example, increasing family income in their community. And so the first step in this is acceptance and commitment training. I'm very pleased to have Steve Hayes be the first person to do a podcast for this effort. In my view, but don't tell him I said this, Steve has made a bigger contribution to psychology than anybody in the last 50 years. We've got a bunch of questions for him, and hopefully he can help us move this forward.
So I'm really happy to be here with you. And the people should know that you and I have been friends for decades, and I greatly respect your work. We've done things together, and it's exciting to see you continuing to fight the good fight.
So, Steve, how about if you start off by telling us what psychological flexibility is?
Yeah, well, it's actually pretty easy to summarize this now, and after all these years, because you can do it in a single sentence. It's basically what life is asking you to learn to be able to have a journey that is prosocial and makes a difference in the world, whether that's your family or the kind of work you do as a psychologist or just your business or the kind of things you do as a parent or a friend. Or as life is asking you to be more open, more aware, more actively engaged in a meaningful life, while scaling that to your relationships and culture and to your body. And you can drop a pin and say, that's pretty much true for all of the major things that we know that change human behavior in the various domains of psychotherapy, but also behavioral health, diet, sleep, exercise, etc., but also performance, social justice, and on it goes. And I can unpack open, aware, and actively engaged for you. I can give some detail to it, but that's what psychological flexibility is in the modern face. There are earlier, more constrained versions, but we keep adding to it because you keep learning new things.
Well, so the next question is, it seems that when people get exposed to the acceptance and commitment training, they generally seem to embrace prosocial values. Why do you think that is?
Well, I need to unpack that sentence a little bit, and I do need to say that it's not just any brand name or specific thing of acceptance and commitment training. It's a good, I spent 20 years trying to distill down to the smallest set of things to do the most good for the most people in the most context, and I just gave you where we landed after 40 years of work. But it turns out if you look at those processes of being more open, which includes both cognitively and emotionally open, feeling what you feel, noticing you have lots of thoughts, taking what's useful, leave the rest. Aware, being able to allocate your attention in a way that's flexible, fluid, and voluntary, and sort of fits your purposes, and to do that consciously. Actively engaged, being connected to what is meaningful, your chosen purpose, we say your values, but building habits around that and then extending it socially, because you're not just a psychological being, you're a social being. And, groups are where we start as human beings. We're the most social primates of them all. And it's where we end up. And it starts even at birth. We are the most social of all the, you know, higher or they say higher organisms, but we're complex creatures on the planet. But you also have a physical body. You better take care of that or ain't taking care of you. And so vitality and health, all of your work on smoking and stuff, Tony, back in the days that, you know, you were mentioning corporations coming in. Sometimes part of what's being sold are things that are hurting in several of the areas that I just mentioned for reasons that we can unpack. Going back to your question, why would it matter? It's also why is it easy if you miss that to succumb to or be victimized by those who are only too happy to make money at your expense by trying to give you what being open, aware, and actively engaged gives you, but in a way that is cuts corners and avoids the hard questions. So act, but it turns out all of the more impactful methods out there in all of these domains with human behavior move those processes. That's why they work. And act is a little more obvious because we spent so many years trying to figure out what the processes are before we went out and started trying to sell the technology. It took us more than 20 years from the first beginning study on ACT to the first book on ACT. And, I did multiple randomized trials and I held some back, which is a big sin in science. Yeah, I held them back because the outcomes were too good. And I didn't want to publish them until I knew why, because I thought consumers need to know that it works and why. If you don't have the answer to the why question, you're kind of shooting in the dark, and everything has its contextual limits. So back to your question, I'll flip it both ways since I've created my problem here of why can they hook you so easily? They being those who just want to make money and are generally not trying to be evil. They're just trying to make money. That's it. And uh, why does it help? It helps because let's start at the end. Where the rubber meets the road is what is of deep importance to you as a person. And can you build habits around that, scaling that to your relationships in your body? It helps because you're clear on what your meaning and purpose is, what your values are. Goals are not values. People will say, yeah, my values are to have a lot of money. It's easy to show that's not true. You say, what will you do with it when you have a lot of money? And then things are going to be said. And sometimes what people say is, and then I'll feel more confident, and then people will like me, and then I will da, 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 da. Wait a minute. There's lots of ways to cut corners to try to get that, and it'll blow up on you. There's data with people who have a lot of money, who think the money will make them more confident, liked by others, important in the group. And they find a way to make a lot of money. Next thing you know, they're selling baseball caps about how they're going to help your group, and they're narcissists because it was never really able to expand out into something where that money would be useful in a deeper way. You don't do it to, patch together a sense of you being a whole and good person. You got to do that work. Uh, so that's the first part, open and aware. So if you just do values, looking work, what do you really want? Yeah, every business on the planet's trying to do that. They all got their little poster up there and they have their little rah-rah teams. And it really comes down to we're going to make a lot of money. And nice things you can do with money, but uh, building a meaningful life that really is satisfying to you, uh, it depends on how you're going to spend that money. So, what do you need? Well, the emotional and cognitive openness allows you to carry your history in a way that empowers that. Because We've all had difficult moments in life. We faced challenges in life. We're treated unfairly. I mean, we're talking about people who may have economic deprivation. They're treated unfairly. They may be victims of stigmatization, prejudice, things of that kind. That's hard. Okay, well, you can do some things there that will make your journey even harder. For example, um, buy into the emotion. You start feeling small. Uh, take that. Uh, start validating yourself. Kind of give you a tiny bit of data, and then I saw a study. This came of meta-analysis of what empowers uh, people who have been the victims of racial discrimination to handle that in a way that's psychologically healthy and to prosper. And one of the biggest ones was acceptance, which is our term for emotional openness. And you go like, what? Acceptance? It'd be like you're accepting your lot. No, here, look at the items. Basically, what they're saying is my feelings are valid. And when you've been the victim of unfair treatment, you're mad about it. That's valid. And so it's prophylactic. It's helpful to stand with yourself. When you stand with yourself, kind of that leap of faith that my feelings are worth my attention. We have a word for that, actually. We call it confidence. It's right in the word. With faith, fidens means faith, con with. There's another example. We sometimes our minds will tell us we'll be confident when we have certain feelings, and we have to wait for the feelings to happen. So we're kind of like trying to drive the car by sniffing on the exhaust. It doesn't steer from there. It steers from up here. When you're more open, then you can maybe allocate your attentional processes, and where the rubber meets the road in values will be right here, right now. But where your mind goes will be worrying about the future, ruminating about the past. You can't change the past. You can learn from it, but rumination doesn't help you do it. The challenges of the future are yet to be met. You can think about it and plan for it, but worrying is not that. And there's good data that rumination and worry doesn't help you be more effective. It makes it easy to be less effective. So the answer to the question you posed, is when you have onboarded we call them mindfulness skills, but doesn't mean meditating under a tree. When you have, it could mean that could be helpful, but the ability to be with your history, show up in the present, and then link that to what you really want to do and extend that to your relationships in your body, you've put your hands on the steering wheel, and the power of your life is there. And conversely, what happens, I think, with uh, the economic interests is if they can figure out a way to sell you on the idea that you can have a better life if you just smoke this cigarette, buy this car, take this pill, whatever the thing might be. And you can not do the hard work of figuring how do I onboard my emotions and thoughts when they include things that are hard? How do I show up in the present moment when it includes things that are difficult? There's a shortcut for that. Just give me the money and I'll give it to you. And what it does, the shortcuts, short-term gain and long-term pain. Every time. If they figured out a way, because smaller sooner beats larger later every single time. That's the kind of creatures we are. And if you learn how to sort of stay true to yourself, you can get through that in a way that you can even face economic hardship, let's say, and take the steps that are needed to challenge the system, but also to ally with your neighbors and yourself and begin to turn the corner as a community, as a family, as an individual. And so uh, I think what's happened is we've allowed short-term reinforcers, we'd say, that are now managed by gigantic corporations that know how to do this better and better and better and better because they're using science against us. I mean, why does Netflix know how to send? Why does social media know how to drop? Because the algorithms are reading you. And with tech, everywhere you go, you're being read. Haven't you noticed that if you do one single search for something, a product somewhere, suddenly it's now in all your streams? Yeah, they're all interconnected and they're all selling their data. They're selling
That came
you.
that became very clear in the decision in the California case against Zuckerberg, that they got the evidence that they were very skilled in keeping people attending, and they did it
This is,
by
this
getting
is
people
big
worried about
tobacco.
themselves.
That's
Yeah.
big, and what you're talking about, and I hope that folks know, and this is big tobacco all over again.
Oh, yeah.
The social media has had scientists figuring out how to, it's a crude way to say it, but milk eyeballs, how to grab them and make sure you get fed what allows you never to escape, and that includes children,
Right.
and that includes selling products that are harmful to them. Because once you can grab them and you can have that time, you can also sell that to other interests who, well, while you're doing that, I could drop in this.
Right.
And whether it's product placement or actual commercials, it's very subtle now. It's not necessarily like it used to be when, we had commercials with commercial television, which has almost disappeared.
Yeah,
And
last year we published a paper on harmful marketing of tobacco, alcohol, pharmaceuticals, guns, fossil fuels, and so on. And there is a movement to try and stop that, but there's a lot of work to be done.
whew,
Can
yeah,
I ask a
yeah,
slightly different question that we didn't
sure.
send to you in advance, Steve, if you're okay,
Great.
kind of playing jazz here with us? Um, what you just said got me thinking about a lot of people in my generation and in the generation below mine. Um, what I've been noticing is there's this yearning to connect with other humans in a very real, tangible way. I've been seeing a movement of people trying to get off social media, trying to live more in the present, in community with each other, and at the same time, being in community with others is very sticky. And there's these there can be conflict, and we're all kind of coming out of this cancel culture phenomena that happened for a minute of the moment someone does something you don't like, you block them, you shut them off, you walk away, you never engage with that person again. A lot of my peers have been trying to practice more of a restorative justice framework and more about calling people in and making amends and trying to live in community with each other, which includes all of the stickiness that comes with being a part of a community together. And yet it's also so easy, like you're saying, the smaller sooner versus the larger later. If I don't want to deal with that, I can just sit in my home all day and just scroll on a screen, and it almost has like this synthetic, it's like a synthetic version of interacting with a social community. Um, and yet it leaves you feeling not satiated. So there's still that yearning for social connection. And I'm just curious your thoughts on how people can apply psychological flexibility skills, um, and just the science that you're aware of, how we can use that to bring people together around ideally, shared values to make collective pro-social action. How do we deal with the stickiness, especially if you're someone who's always grown up with a phone in your hand and the algorithms, out there trying to lure you in?
Well, I'm going to say something that's a little bit wanders away from a simple answer for this reason. Um, here's the way I usually describe it. If you look at the tip of your finger, that's less than a square inch of skin. If you were to ask how unique is that, if every single grain of sand on the planet was a fingerprint, and you're saying how many grains of sand would I have to go through to find another one like this? There's vastly more grains of sands on the planet than there are fingerprints of the billions of people on the planet. Like many, many, many quadrillions of. And the answer is more than a million Earths. That's how unique one square inch of your skin is. So if you're going to say, I'll disagree with you, but then roll off, we shouldn't be on social media. No, that's just not true. You can look at the social prosperity person by person. It depends on what you do on social media. It depends. And uh, you can create community and develop social skills and all kinds of things. And we actually have in the research that I'm doing on psychological flexibility and how to detect when evolution goes awry and you spin down into the kind of scenario you're talking about, um, and when that doesn't happen. So we don't want to set us up to be the curmudgeons who said rock and roll is bad for everybody. Please, come on. Every single generation says books are going to destroy us, radio is going to kill us, TV's going. Yeah, the challenges get bigger and the changes get faster. And we're not throw if you wanted to do, and I'm out of the generation that went back to the land when they figured out that they couldn't do the Summer of Love, and I took 3 years before it turned into a nightmare. And I was sitting there on Hippie Hill in the panhandle of the park there in San Francisco. So I saw it up close and personal, and it turned into needles on the ground and dog poop and people lying next to it. It took 3 years, boom, done. And we ran to the land. What happened? Go visit those folks and they'll come out with a shotgun because they don't want you to see who's in the back 40. That doesn't look to me like something that's so great. So let's not do that. Let's be wiser. Now, I think we've done some things, and you mentioned cancel culture and what's called woke, being woke and so forth. Some of that is yet another version of we're going to avoid the hard work by having only the right things to say and the things that never bother anyone. And the things that no, that's not, we'll give triggers. And if you don't give a trigger, I'm gonna shame you for saying the words the wrong way. The left has made huge errors in that, and what do we see? We see political pushback. People just saying this is BS. I don't want to have to. Who said you? Who set you up that I have to say the words in my? We and so I think it's another phase of psychological inflexibility. However, yes, there are big interests that are taking advantage of this, and yes, we really want to reach out and touch people and have meaningful direct. And let me give you an example. I'll just give you one that's really, really important. People go to school. Most people go to school, and it's physical. Most people. It's not just on your. We went through some with COVID, and we saw how that was a problem, actually. And a lot of people still go to college. And almost everything that you struggle with as an adult developed in those years. If you look at how many long-term problems people have, smoking, for example, when does it start? It doesn't start when you're 35, usually. It starts in those days. Well, I'm looking at something that came out yesterday from a journal called Innovations in Higher Education, pretty good journal, from a project called Healthy Minds. What is Healthy Minds? Been around for 30 years. It was the Healthy Minds Project. It was a big grant. Daniel Eisenberg at the University of Michigan, he's now at UCLA. It now has a center also still at Michigan, but also at BU at Boston University. And it was simply a process of trying to measure what's going on with college students so that we could figure out, is the culture changing? Are these cohorts coming in? Do they need different things? So that we could prevent and put things into the system. Well, what does this one show? It's a very nice piece from Healthy Minds with something more than 16,000 participants from 104 universities showing that psychological flexibility increases the sense of belongingness while being at college. Why is that important? Social support and belongingness in this crucible of going from a child to a young adult to adulthood, this crucial developmental periods don't just apply to 8-year-olds. And it turns out it's crucial in allowing people to create a social environment that can be challenging. You do disagree with your roommate sometimes. You do have arguments and so forth. Yeah, welcome to being human. If you extend psychological flexibility to it, it gives you some tools. In addition to being open to your own emotions, become more open to others. In addition to being able to notice your mind and its thoughts, many of which are goofy thoughts that are not helpful to you. And by the way, just pick something. Pick something you hate that you would criticize somebody else about. My point there is, I was talking about this, the left and right both have the same kind of errors and the same kind of rigidity if you don't do this psychological work. Here at college, we're going to meet different people. Well, emotional openness means being more empathetic and compassionate and open to the emotion of others. Cognitive openness means noticing all these different thoughts that you have. And let me just point out, if there's things you really hate, let's say racist jokes, how do you know to hate them? You heard them. Can you tell me one that you heard that's really horrible that you don't tell anyone? Yes, you can. That means it's in your head for the rest of your life. If you don't know how to deal with difficult thoughts, how are you going to deal when you hear somebody saying, you're going to say, don't say that. Say it this way. I'm no longer going to be your friend. Dude, you're failing the test. But in order to be with others, you're going to have to, yeah, make room for your own history, which includes stuff you don't like, including things you think and say, and let go of that. Adopt new habits. Yes, that could include things like more sensitive language. Do that also with others. Extend it. So when you socially extend openness, emotionally, it turns into compassion and empathy. Cognitively, it turns into genuine conversations, real conversations where you can listen, share. Same thing with joint attention. What do we together as roommates, as sorority mates or fraternity mates, as all members of this club, what do we want to attend to? What's of importance? And can we together kind of monitor that we do that? Now we're moving over into Eleanor Ostrom's core design principles. We're moving over into a thing called prosocial that you both know about so well. And then that sets a stage where you can get results like this, where you get a sense of belongingness during this critical period where social connection and belonging will be a foundation. You'll have friends for the rest of your life if you handle it right.
So, Steve, I want to pursue,
Yeah.
all the work I did on tobacco and so on. I got into public health, and public health
Mhm.
is simply the incidence and prevalence of problems in a population. You have reached millions of people. Is that a fair?
It's true. I have
Right.
no doubt. No doubt.
And you just described the study that somebody else has done, and I could tell you about Doug Carnine's kindness, and I mean,
Right.
there's a whole bunch of these, and actually, what I've been meaning to do is put on our website a list of all of these people. But the question is, for me, is how do we get this to work to to address the problems that we have? I'll give you a thought I've had about this. You have somebody who's been in a mental, asylum, and they get treated, and let's say that they get ACT and they're really doing really well. That may be, but I don't expect them to show up at the next Democratic Party meeting to change the society. They're still trying to repair things with their family and so on. Do you see where I'm getting at? well, actually, let me connect it with this. What Allie and I are talking about is inviting people to an ACT program that is designed to help them cope with the stress that they have over the terrible things that are happening. I mean, I have a sister who's just, really so distressed by all of this, but people, I think, don't know what to do. And so I'm asking, we
How do
know
we,
what we're
well,
trying to do.
here's the way I would take this. I would say, how do we scale the biopsychosocial processes that all need to work
Yeah.
together to empower healthy persons, relationships, families, neighborhoods, organizations? And the cool thing about the life's asking you to be more open, aware, and actively engaged in a meaningful life, scaling that to your relationships and your body formulation. The cool thing about that is that by focusing on the small steps that occur, we can start anywhere, because anything you have that's either a positive goal or a problem are going to take small steps to do something about it. And that sentence I give you will help orient you towards what they are, not just with ACT, but with any useful and powerful uh, biopsychosocial method. Now, some of the ones that are helpful are hurtful because they give you the shortcuts instead of the real deal. So if, let's say, you know, you go and complain of distress and your PA scripts you antidepressants. They're not antidepressants. That's a marketing term. Yeah, but they are helpful. It's on the PHQ-9, written by a marketer. They were there to sell the chemicals, and they've done it. And by the way, if it's high dose long term, it's hard to back out of them. That's why they're so successful, why they're billion-dollar entities as part of a $1.5 trillion industry. We don't want to be guinea pigs for a $1.5 trillion industry. Okay, well, how are we going to? Well, we do now have direct to consumer ways of helping people to understand what's happening when those distressing things are happening. And we can reach providers who don't morally want to, they just want to help quickly, lower dose, tapered, linked to psychosocial. Can we put that into physical medicine? Yes. Can we put it into academic psychiatry? Absolutely, we can. And when we do, what happens? Better outcomes long term. And that's true of all the major areas. Now, let's think about how that could be done. I think we're moving, because of what's happening with the internet and the rest, into a world in which I think everybody knows that it's no longer chunked by what other people put on you, it's what you create. No, here's what I'm saying. Uh, let's just take good AI, good, honest AI. You can ask questions and get good answers if you know how to ask the questions. You can learn things if you're out there anywhere about how to take positive, healthy steps and move forward. Can we create a world that is as individualistic in one sense of the term as your fingertip? In other words, as fitted to you. That still allows you to come together in community and not make these big mistakes of, let me just take the thing that's an antidepressant. When I take it, and yeah, what's happening is it's down regulating your ability even to feel joy. It's dampening your feelings. So if you're dealing with a lot of difficult feelings, yeah, it has a positive effect at the cost of dampening everything else too. And then that begins to have a side effects, and some of these things become ones that you can't back out of because of your body adjusting to them. So, but the internet will tell you that. It'll walk you through. I'm taking this dose. What will happen over 10 years? It's known. This is not new, what I'm saying. And so maybe your physician's assistant didn't know it, because the detail guy who was trying to sell the particular brand, and it's all brand new and doesn't have any side effects and it's all nonsense. Of course it does. We're guinea. Okay, I view a world where people begin to realize that we are in control of our lives. Kind of think of it this way. Type 1 change. Those folks out there have to change me. And they're the experts, and I'm a passive recipient. I'll go to my physician, I get this. I hear my neighbor say that, I get that. Now we're in a world where there's a type 2 alternative of consumers directly becoming masters of their own world. And the tools that are available, you mentioned psychological flexibility. You mentioned how many places it goes. Okay, you want a really good book on psychological flexibility? Go to the World Health Organization. And you're going to find Doing What Matters in Times of Stress. It's the single most downloaded document in the WHO website.
We're about to implement it with African refugees in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, and it's right now in the forests of Colombia, and it's right now in the bombed buildings of Ukraine. It's around the world, and the director of mental health, Mark Van Omeren, public health guy, who reached out to me 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and said, "Is there anything we can do about people who survive war? It isn't just mental health disorders that happen; it's everything goes to hell." And I said, "Yeah, help people learn to be more psychologically flexible and extend that to your relationships in your body." Say, "Will you do it?" I said, "No, you don't want me to do it. I'm too much of a geek. Call this guy Russ Harris. He's really good. He's a great popularizer." Created a cartoon book with audio tapes and people with literally elementary school education sitting with folks in circles in dirt with nothing but their lives, and having watched their husbands be chopped with machetes on the way out of the war, etc. We now know, we even have prevention trials with a 50% reduction of the development of so-called mental disorders after you've survived that over a 6-month period with nothing more than a cartoon book, audio tapes, and some social meetings by people who are trained to do it, but they're not experts. So we're damn close, I think, to being able to do a runaround the corporate interests that are trying to wall us off and gather us in. If we take advantage of some of the tech that's happening to build community, including real social communities, but also virtual ones that allow this Change 2.0 agenda to happen. And that has to meet the interests of the particular person. And if I could say one thing about how ACT has spread it around the world, there's about 1 million professionals trained in ACT. There's been something like 14 to 15 million copies of books sold in 30 different languages around the world. But if you just do the math of how many people have read it or how many people have been influenced by those about 1 million professionals, just ACBS, our main society, has had almost 50,000 members over the years. That's one little society. It's tens of millions, maybe more than that. Could be even into 100 million.
So why did
how? It was by, me and 4 graduate students 45 years ago. But what we have done all the way along is try to meet the needs of the particular and do it in a way that gives you tools that answer why, that can be extended to the other issues that you have and be extended socially in other areas. So the smallest set that do the most things for the most people in the most areas. Now, where ACT is weak is where you are strong, Tony.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nurture Effect podcast, a Values to Action initiative. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Values to Action is a community of scientists, clinicians, and concerned citizens that seeks to leverage behavioral science, affect change, and make the world a better place for everyone. Join the movement at valuestoaction.org.